Hi there, this is Ben Sanford with Tribal Edge, and just wanted to share with you a little experiment or exercise that you could try in tracking that will expand or enhance your ability to detect baseline and changes in the baseline, and trailing, and many other things, actually. This is a really cool exercise. So this is a variation of an exercise that I learned from Tom Brown, and I know it's used by a lot of people, but I just call it, or how I learned it was called the 10-step drill, which means you go to any substrate, any material medium you want to walk in, and you mark your first step, mark your, say, right foot, and mark it like at the back of the heel, and then you walk naturally for 10 steps across this substrate, and then you mark that last track, and then you carefully, without walking on your tracks, circle back around and study the trail that you've left behind. So depending on the substrate you're walking in, this can be really easy if it's sand, or mud or something. It can be really hard if it's something like gravel or dry grass or other kinds of debris that don't give you a lot of don't capture a lot of disturbance. So so one way to practice this is to do the 10-step drill often and spend a lot of time looking at your own tracks. And after a while, of course, you get used to what you expect to see. You kind of start to imagine, well, you get used to your own pattern. So you see your stride and your trail width, and you kind of start to know where to look for footprints. But still, often there can be cases where you might only pick up a few of your tracks with confidence. And even though you know where the other ones might be, it's hard to tell. It's hard to actually collect data. Like you're having a hard time seeing them. So just wanted to offer this variation of the 10-step drill I'm calling the 100-step drill, or the 10 times 10 step drill. So what you do is you do the same process. You mark your first track, you walk naturally for 10 steps, you mark your last track, you circle around, you try and see them, and you study them like normal. After you've gathered all the data you can and you've noted what you can, you walk back to the beginning and you carefully stand in the first track again, and to the best of your ability, walk exactly in those same tracks in the same way. So same natural movement, same natural walk. And hopefully you want to walk a little bit carefully in this first lap, make sure that you're matching. You don't want to misalign your tracks. But so if you can't really see them, sometimes it's cool, you can just trust your natural gait and you'll find it. You can actually feel it. If you're barefoot, you'll feel the track, and you kind of fit into it. And then you do it a second time, which is 20 steps. And as you circle back around, most likely at that point, you're going to start to see at least more of a difference, and probably more tracks. But possibly it's still kind of hard to see some of them, even though you know where they are. And after walking over it a couple of times, you might even remember where you stepped. But that's not the point. The point is to actually observe and gather as much data as you can. So after observing those tracks and seeing what you can get, what you can observe, you go back and you do it a third time. And you just repeat this process each time in between, making observations, noticing what you notice, and seeing the whole trail, how it starts to come into focus and into clarity. And you do this, up to 10 times, which by the 10th one is probably going to leave a pretty good trail that's going to be something that most people could see if they came across it, which is really cool. So one thing I forgot to mention too is, as you're walking, if you take about a second per step, having a little bit of time in the track helps compress the material and makes it a little more visible. So I'm going to show you an example of this. If I can get to this. All right, so here's an example I did today. This is out in some grass. The ground's relatively soft. It's rained recently. It doesn't get a lot of traffic, so the ground's nice and aerated and is actually tracks pretty well. But you probably know if you've taken pictures of tracks, they're still hard to see on a camera. And even in real life, this was a little challenging to see, even though I knew where it was, because you can see here's my shoe, and I lined up my shoe with my first track to give you a reference. But you see some discoloration and some patterns in the ground here, but it's hard to make sense of it. I mean, there's this here, there's this here. It looks pretty similar. There might be a few disturbances that, since I did walk through there, you could guess. But check this out. So that's the first pass. And again, this is from a distance. The lighting is decent right here. The lighting, I mean, the tracks are between the camera and the light. But the lighting does change in this experiment too. So that's kind of a factor as well. So let's take another pass. And here's what we see on number 2. So a couple of things start to show up. One, maybe you've noticed, is this little spot here seems a lot more contrasted. There's a lot more of a shadow right there. And there's a little more shiny, dull going on, contrast between this shiny patch and this darker patch and this shiny patch. And those two disturbances there, you could start to say, are making a pattern. But still, let's do this again and look at a third pass. So the lighting changed, which is, this is all, I did this all within minutes of each other, but it was a spring day and the lights changing. But even so, and that can be a huge, huge challenge, but even so, check out the edges that are showing up, right? There's some more shadows showing up as we go along here. So that was number 3. Let's look at 4 passes. That's 4 passes. By the way, my first track was right here. It's funny, it's kind of hard to see. 5 passes. 6 passes. 7 passes. Wow, the trail's really starting to come to light. Now you're starting to see some very consistent tracks right here. 8 passes. The lighting changed again a little bit. 9 and 10. This one I kind of had a slightly different position. You can start to see my first track though, right there. So anyway, so this is a way to kind of bootstrap yourself into seeing trails and tracking. And you could do an experiment with, well, it gives you a lot of information. A lot of things are going on here. One is what it looks like when many people walk in the same tracks, which if you've done certain classes at Tracker, that's a interesting pattern to start to see. It also, even though it's in a short period of time, gives you a sense of what a trail looks like over time, how trails develop, and as trails age with wear. Even though this happened quickly, we haven't had a day in between. This is one right after another, but you can see the depth that's created, and as you're doing this, as you're walking through this, there's some really cool things happening too in terms of what you're feeling, how the changes in the ground and the depth of the track, how you're starting to notice even some of the macro pressure releases being consistent and being formed. So anyway, I thought this was a really cool way to enhance the 10-step drill and get a little more out of it. And yeah, I encourage you to give it a shot. Try it in different terrains, different lightings, and if 10 steps or 10 rounds isn't enough, keep walking it until you start to see your trail. You'll see it eventually. Yeah, let me know what you discover. So thanks for watching and checking that out, and have fun tracking out there. Take care and keep going.